But I also want people to text me their questions. So I want to give you my phone number, and you text, and then there's kind of like, language so that I could text you back, and then you're able to add me to your contact list and ask me questions. So the phone number, you could text me questions anytime you want. If you're listening to this, you could text me in the middle of the night, and I will answer these questions either directly through text or on Instagram or on Twitter. And once a week, I'm going to text all my favorite ideas of the week and any meetups or appearances I'm going to do. But my phone number is 203-590-8607. That's 203-590-8607. And feel free to text me and ask me any questions you want. I'll always try to respond with text, but if not, I'll try to answer more generally to the whole audience on Instagram Live or Twitter or whatever. Robyn will be joining me any second. She's doing some errand in the house. Yes, so 203-590-8607. You can text me your questions. It'll make you kind of sign up to be part of my text community. There's like all sorts of, I can't text people back unless you add me to your contact list or something like that. But I'm going to start just randomly answering questions right now that came on that people texted me. I tweeted my phone number earlier. I already got some questions, and I will respond to them. So this one comes from, I don't know who it is. It's anonymous. How do you stay committed to executing on a business idea? So this is a really good question, because a lot of times people start businesses and they run out of steam. And this has happened to me before. So I started a business once. This was in 2008. I started a business called Jungle Smash. And the idea was I would put up a brand like Crest toothpaste, and people would make their own commercials for Crest toothpaste, and then at the end of the month, it would be like a contest. I would decide who made the best commercial, and I would pay a $2,000 prize for the best commercial. And so why is this a business idea? Well, right now, if Procter Gamble wants to make an advertisement for Crest toothpaste, they spend millions of dollars with their advertising agency. So I figured crowdsourcing of commercials for really huge brands would be a great idea. And it was a great idea. You know who, so hundreds of people submitted videos on the first contest for Crest toothpaste. Oh, welcome, Robyn, to the Instagram Live.
Hi, sorry.
So I just told people they could actually text me their questions on my phone, 203-590-8607. Feel free to text me any time of the day or night so that I'm ready for answering the questions on Instagram Live. And somebody asked, how do you stay committed to executing a business idea, and can you give me an example from your own life? So I was describing Jungle Smash, which was a business I created in 2008 to crowdsource. I would post a brand like Crest toothpaste, and people would upload their own YouTube videos or videos about Crest toothpaste that were like commercials. And then I would give a $2,000 reward every month to whatever the best commercial was. So you know why I know this is a good idea is that Crest toothpaste submitted 10 videos. So they wanted to win the contest about their own brand, and then they wanted to talk to me. And so my picture for this idea was that companies would then compete by paying me to have their brands featured on junglesmash.com. And so let's say then Colgate toothpaste or Ford Motors or whatever would pay to be, hey, can we be the featured brand on next month's contest on Jungle Smash? And so on. And then it would be almost like this virtual ads. It would be like a crowdsourced ad agency.
That's pretty neat.
By the way, it's a good idea. And by the way, nobody to this day, well, I'll finish the story. So it was 2008, and I did one contest, two contests. I think the videos might even still be at junglesmash.blogspot.com. Let me check that out real quickly. And Jungle Smash, yes, the videos are still there. I did one for Monster Energy. I did one for Crest toothpaste. And look, all these videos are still there. I picked the best ones and I put them on the site. People would send me, oh, here's Paris Hilton's version. And hey, Jay, how are you doing? Jay, I hope you've been recording this. I'm talking about Jungle Smash. If you didn't record it, I'll talk about it in the intro on the podcast. But here's what happened. I lost interest. So I ran 2 or 3 contests. I lost interest, and that's it. That was the end of the business. I just simply did not continue it. Why did I lose interest? I still thought it was a good idea, and in fact, to this day, nobody has created a crowdsourced ad agency for large brands. I still think it's an enormous idea, like basically $1 billion idea, or if not $1 billion idea, a $10 million idea. I still think it's a great idea. You should do it. This is the second $10 million business idea of the week. And again, the reason why I know it's a good idea is the first brand I posted was Crest toothpaste. I just picked that randomly because I liked using Crest when I was a little kid. Procter Gamble, not only did they submit their own videos along with hundreds of other individuals, and they didn't win, by the way, but they even wanted to talk to me about it. So this was a good idea. And I did not have the commitment to follow through. Why didn't I have the commitment to follow through? Well, at the time, I was going through a divorce. I had also gone broke from the 3rd or 4th company I had sold, and I was depressed from that. And then the financial crisis started happening, so I was depressed from that. So all these things together, and I just simply lost interest. But you know what? I should still do this idea. It's a good idea. And so Swearworks says, why would they submit their own videos? I don't know, actually. I think that's why they called me, is they wanted to talk about it. Maybe they immediately wanted to buy the company. Who knows? Or maybe they thought it was an exciting idea, or maybe they wanted to invest in the company. I started this and I knew there was interest immediately. Freakonomics mentioned it on their podcast. They did a whole podcast about what would it be like to crowdsource ads, and they featured Jungle Smash. So I was getting hundreds and hundreds of submissions. So it was a good idea. I think it's still a good idea. Heck, I still might do it, but I think one of you guys should do it. And so the question really was, the original question was, how do you stick to an idea? You don't always stick to an idea. You don't have to. The key is to try many ideas and see which one really, you always want to do experiments. And so my experiment was to just launch this on a blog, and there was no software needed. I was able to launch the whole company in one day and invite people to submit videos, which they did. So that was an experiment. An experiment has very little downside, huge upside. Like if I made this into a huge company, it could have been $10, $20 million or more. And no matter what, I would learn something. So what I learned, even though I stopped doing this business idea, what I learned is that it was a good idea, and that a crowdsourced ad could actually be better than the ads made by the brand itself. Like if you look on junglesmash.blogspot.com, where I still have the videos, the kind of semi-winners saved, they're pretty good. The crowd can create good ads. So I learned that. I learned this was a viable business model. So remember, an experiment has these features: very little downside in time or money, always upside, and you either have enormous upside in that the business idea works, the experiment works, or you have upside in that you learn something. And, that's it. It's easy to set up. Every experiment's easy to set up. Can you think of a time you experimented with something?
Oh, I experiment all the time. But, how long do you say that we should experiment on one thing? That's sometimes an experiment takes longer.
Yeah, sometimes experiment could take days. So when I launched stockpicker.com, which was a website that I did sell for just a few months after I started it, and it was a very successful business, and I made millions of dollars on it. Don't worry, I then went broke immediately about a year later. But when I did stockpicker.com, that was the 10th experiment in a series of 10 experiments. So Dan, my business partner, and I, we built 9 different websites, and each one was an experiment. Each one cost us hardly anything, and each one was an experiment. We created dating sites, we created information sites, we created social networks, and then we created stockpicker.com. Stockpicker is the one that worked, but it was the result of 10 experiments on businesses. Another thing that I started and ultimately stopped was Stephen Dubner, the creator of Freakonomics, who I'm actually doing a podcast with, I think, tomorrow. But Stephen Dubner and I started a podcast called Question of the Day, and we ran it for about a year and a half. We were making good money from it, and then we just lost interest and we stopped doing it. You don't want to do things where you're just doing it for the money. Like when I play a game of chess, my heart is excited. Like I love playing. Like sometimes I'm out all day, and as soon as we get in, I rush to the computer and I want to play a game of chess online. My heart's on fire, but not my brain, because I know it's not a business idea to play chess. But when your heart and your brain are connecting on a business idea, that's a good time to continue. And with Question of the Day, we simply ran out of steam. Like we weren't growing anymore. We were making good money every month, but we weren't growing. And sometimes it feels good to grow. But we did that for a year and a half. So some experiments I'll do for a day. Like when I wanted to get better at comedy, I did an experiment. I went on the subway and performed for a half hour stand-up comedy against the angriest audience you could possibly imagine. And that was a good experiment. I learned a lot of things, and it had no downside, and it was easy to implement. And I learned something. I learned how to, be a little tighter in my jokes, so even an angry audience can still laugh. And so you always, people talk about the 10,000 hour rule for learning. Oh, you got to spend 10,000 hours to be good at something. I don't have 10,000 hours left. I'm in my 50s. I don't want to spend any hours, but I have what I call the 10,000 experiment rule, and you could literally make millions of dollars. I've proven it. You can make millions of dollars with the 10,000 experiment rule. Just every day, I always try to think of mini experiments to do, or I continue experiments like if I'm working on Jungle Smash or whatever. So even though that idea didn't work and I gave up on it because for various dumb reasons, but that's okay, I knew that if I always came up with experiments, I will have an abundance of ideas and opportunities to make money and so on. So sometimes in that one, I have no excuse. That was a good idea. I should have done it. I saw that it was working. It would have worked. I have no excuse, but you don't always have to continue every idea.
Well, I think too, something that you need to think about is when you do have an experiment that works, you can continue doing it or by replacing yourself, or like finding somebody that can actually carry that through while you're doing another experiment. Because the problem is like with sometimes with you are you're the talent, right? So it's like you're the only one that can do it. So the trick is to finding ideas and these things, and then once it's established or you think it's a good idea, then you need your team. You need people that can actually
that's such a good point.
Carry through.
So
and then you can go on another one. So then you'll have many things going on, but you really need the people, that can support your ideas.
That's such a good point. Like with Jungle Smash, at that point, I could have gotten on a good CEO, given up 10 or 20% of the equity, and I had the rest of the equity, and just say, I don't even want to look at this again. You run this. Keep building it, and I will be in charge of selling it. I'm good at selling things to another company or raising money, things like that. But you keep running the day-to-day of this and make it bigger and bigger and do deals and whatever. And let's talk to ad agencies. I had relationships with ad agencies. Yeah. Another time I did an experiment. I wanted to make a dating website on top of Twitter. So I called it 140love, and it was at 140love.com. I don't think I have the URL anymore. And that was an experiment. And again, I think I described this before. It didn't really work. So then I tried another experiment. I learned all this stuff about how to create websites around the data that was in Twitter. So an ad agency contacted me and wanted me to help them develop a Twitter strategy for, I think it was the GM or the Chrysler Volt. I forget which brand it was. They wanted me to fly to Detroit. So I had a whole Twitter ad agency all of a sudden that I was going to get paid for. My first client, which was one of the major car companies, and major car, the Volt, which was this electric powered car that they were experimenting with. And I said yes to doing it. And then I simply didn't want to travel to Detroit. And the ad agency called me 5,000 times And I never returned their calls. I just didn't want to do it. So again, that's something that I had evidence it was going to work. I could have built a Twitter or social media ad agency built on top of my 140love.com software, and I didn't do it. But instead, I've done other things. And you have to experiment until you figure out the things you like. So just because something's a good idea doesn't mean you have to continue it. And
it doesn't mean you have to actually be the one to do it. Like, really, what you're good at is coming up with these ideas, right?
Yeah.
And then there are other people that really can't come up with ideas, but they're actually good at, they're the doers. And
right.
They like that. They don't want to be the talent, or they don't want to, they can't do that. Everyone's different.
Right. And so the flip question is, if you do want to commit to something, but you're, for whatever reason, it's hard for you to do it, one idea is to do what Robyn just suggested, find someone to do it. Another idea is to sell it quickly, the business idea. Another idea might be to just experiment with other things at the same time, so you diversify your interests, so you go back and forth between a couple of different ideas. I've done that many times in my life. I'm doing that right now. I have a couple of different ideas in the air, and I'm currently doing that. So there's no one answer. Like, how do you commit to something for a long time? Well, in a relationship, you make a commitment, like we're committed to each other. You make a commitment because, I don't know why. Commitment's a weird word, because at any point, we're not going to stay with each other if we feel like we're going to be unhappy permanently. But we also have a commitment to, if we are unhappy, to work problems out and not just walk out the door. So you kind of decide your level of commitment, but you always have to remember, you are a free person. You're free to make your choices, whatever you want, whenever you want. So define commitment for yourself, but also don't punish yourself if you start a business idea, whether it's good or bad, you just lose interest and you move on. Because trust that if you apply the ideas of the 10,000 experiment rule and the ideas of writing down 10 ideas a day, you will always succeed in the long run. That's the thing you have to be consistent with and be committed to. Keep trying experiments, keep writing 10 ideas a day down. Those are the most important things to be consistent with.
And I always say, you need a Procter to your Gamble. I mean, like, there are a lot of companies that were created because, that partnership, they complement each other. So you need to find that person that you can trust, and before you do make that commitment.
Yeah, and there's great examples, like Apple Computer. Steve Jobs was the kind of charismatic visionary. Steve Wozniak was the technical guy. Microsoft. Bill Gates was the deal guy. Paul Allen was the more technical guy. Even Google. Larry Page was slightly more technical. Sergey Brin was the more charismatic visionary guy. So this same person texted me on my phone, 203 590 8607. He texted some other ones. How do you jumpstart your 10 creative ideas of the day when you aren't feeling very creative? I'm getting a theme here, by the way, from this same person. So you're having problems with commitment, you're not feeling very creative. Let me tell you something. If you write down 10 ideas a day, every day, you will be more excited. I was so depressed in the summer of 2002, and it was the depression that had lasted for almost 2 years. And I could barely get out of bed in the morning. But once I started writing 10 ideas a day down, boom, I was like, after a few weeks, I was just so excited to jump out of bed, go to a cafe, bring some books, read some books, and then start writing my 10 ideas of the day down. And so what I would suggest is you always have to exercise that idea muscle. And so I made, to answer this question, I made kind of a little bit of a list of lists. So here are some idea lists you could do if you want to jumpstart your creativity. So for instance, I'm married to Robyn. What are 10 ideas for as gifts I could give Robyn, or 10 things I could do to make Robyn happier? That might be an idea list of the day. She's thinking to herself, it better be 100 things on that list, or I'm not happy. Or you could write a list of 10 ideas for thriller novels. You can write 10 things you learned yesterday. So these aren't ideas, but it forces you to exercise the brain. Like, it's hard for me to think, I can barely even remember what I had for breakfast. let alone what I learned yesterday. So that's a possible idea list. You could think of 10 things you disagree with the media about. Like, look at the newspaper and make a list of 10 things you disagree about. You could make a list of 10 online courses you could create. By the way, if you don't have 10 online courses you could create, think of all your friends and think of, oh, Jack can create an online course about gardening. You know, Samantha can create an online course about cooking. Elizabeth can create an online course about astrology or astronomy or whatever. You could do 10 business ideas for Twitter. Maybe Twitter should allow video tweets or
I have an idea. Maybe a list of people that you can go to with some ideas that can partner with you.
Oh yeah, make a list of
Like
10 partners. So for instance, if you were to have a jungle smash kind of idea and you felt like you were losing commitment, make a list now of 10 people who you might be able to approach that you could hand a business like that off to.
That can complement you, yeah.
Yeah, 10 gambles to your Procter. Make a list of 10 experiments you can do today. Like maybe you want your child to get ready for school faster. What are 10 ways you could experiment to get her, to incentivize her, 10 incentives you can come up with to get her to be more ready for school. Or you could take 2 older idea lists and combine them. Like, let's say you had a list of 10 cooking recipes and 10 songs. Well, now make 10 of your favorite songs. Well, now make, using the same beats of those songs, write the recipes using the melodies of those songs. I don't know. Or here's another one: 10 old ideas you can make new again. Like, Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz. What would a modern day Dorothy be like? Jesus. What would a modern day Jesus be like? David Copperfield from the Charles Dickens novels. What would a modern day David Copperfield be like? Luke Skywalker. Now he's from a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. So what would Luke Skywalker be like in modern day New York City if he was a Wall Street trader? So, 10 podcast ideas you could do. Like, do you want to do a podcast on relationships? Do you want to do a podcast on coronavirus? Do you want to do a 3-minute podcast each day on the headline of the day? Just come up with, don't forget, most ideas are bad ideas. And if you have trouble coming up with 10 ideas, do you know what the key is? Come up with 20 ideas, because then it reduces the pressure on you for every one idea. So, here's 10 ideas for thriller novels. Here's a random idea list: 10 things women totally don't know about men. Here's 10 things I'm interested in getting better at. So everybody has 10 things that they're interested in getting better at. Maybe I want to be a better writer. Maybe I want to be a better chess player. Maybe I want to be better at poker or sales or whatever. 10 things you were interested in when you were 12 years old, because all of those things might lead to career choices now. So again, there is no excuse for not writing a 10 idea list, even if you're not feeling creative. Notice, you don't have to be, I can come up with, so take Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz. Maybe Dorothy is just a divorced mom right now with 3 kids. That's not really creative. That's a bad idea if I was going to make Dorothy now. But who knows, maybe it could lead to something. Maybe in a hurricane, Dorothy abandons her kids and is swept off to Oz, and suddenly finds that maybe she much prefers being a divorced mom with 2 kids than being in Oz. I don't know. See, this is probably a bad idea. Don't judge yourself on bad ideas. All right, I'm gonna go to the next question that this same person texted me, although I am seeing the theme. What's the worst idea you have come up with? The idea you thought was terrible, but somehow turned out to be good. I don't know, actually. That's a good question. I think it's hard to know, because most of the ideas I come up with are really, really bad. So it's hard for me to know later that they turned out to be good. probably the worst idea that I've ever come up with that turned out to be good. It might have been this experiment of doing stand-up comedy in a subway car. Because what I ended up doing was I then called my friend AJ Jacobs and we created a whole talk show format in the subway, and it was just fun to do. So I did my monologue, which was the stand-up on the subway. Then I interviewed AJ. Then we had a busker on, a guy playing garbage cans on the subway platform, and as the musical guest. And so I created a whole late night talk show on the subway. So that was like a bad idea that I made into at least a fun and good one. Have you corrected for personal weaknesses as they relate to your business life? For example, not being good at responding to email. And the answer is yes, and it's partly so how do I so it's always a big question. Do you get better at your weaknesses or do you get better at your strengths? The answer to that you can learn from politics. So if a politician is good with women but not so good with men, the question is, should they get better with men or should they double down on their activity, on their efforts for campaigning for women? The answer is that many politicians know is you double down on your strengths. And that politician in that example would campaign more with women and start to ignore men more and more. So I like to double down on my strengths, but Robyn had the good idea of I should outsource for the things I'm weak at. Now, do you need money to do that? No, you need to find people who are excited in what you're excited about, and you give them equity. And there's lots of ways to arrange situations. Sometimes you can outsource things to a virtual assistant. Sometimes you can outsource things to a machine, so who knows? What are some accelerations that haven't been discussed already? So we already know in this pandemic, restaurants are going to close. There's going to be more divorces. Online learning is going to increase. So these things have been discussed all over the place. So this is a good question. What accelerations have not been talked about? Well, we've talked about it a little bit here, but I do think hygiene, which I'm not an expert in, as you could tell, hygiene is going to be much accelerated. So people are going to, and this is important from a personal point of view and a business point of view, which I will get to also in another question. But people are going to start washing their hands more. People are going to start showering more. People are going to wash their clothes and their sheets more. People are going to disinfect surfaces more. Businesses are going to be much more focused on hygiene and cleanliness. So I also think clean energy is going to accelerate. So people are going to be there's going to be a much faster transition to electric vehicles from, vehicles that need gas. Because we saw the benefits of, there's clear skies because there's less carbon emissions during this lockdown. So clean energy is going to accelerate. I do think, police reform obviously is going to accelerate, and maybe the usage of non-lethal devices, like I've talked before about the bowler wrap device, which I was a co-founder of, but it's a device that shoots out a wrap and wraps around you. It's like a superhero kind of gun. Next question. Are you really going to answer all these questions from everybody? I'm going to try. We'll see. One more question. It's an idea. Maybe you can have Robyn read you the questions. Maybe next time, because the questions are over there and she's over here. One more question. You moved last week from New York City to Florida. We didn't really move. We're going back and forth equally. Were there any big surprises or adjustments you needed to make from going from full lockdown to no lockdown?
No, I don't think so.
You don't think?
You mean like us living there in full lockdown and then moving here? And
Yeah.
there's really no. I mean, I don't know. We usually stay home. We just went out to dinner. I mean, we had to wear masks. I don't know what else.
Well, that's a huge one, actually. We went out to dinner. We've gone out to dinner 5 nights now since we've come down here. We're going back to New York City in a few days. But we've gone out to dinner 5 nights. And we didn't go out to dinner for 3.5 months before. And another adjustment we've had to make is I used to do comedy shows 3 to 5 nights a week. And I've done 1 in the past 4 months. But that's not an adjustment from New York City to here. I still haven't done any comedy here.
Well, for me, I guess a big adjustment is just managing 2 households or 2 locations.
Yeah. What's hard about that?
It's not. It's just there's more work to do. So I mean, I have no problem with it. It's just.
I'll tell you. Here's the adjustment from no lockdown to lockdown. so many things. I love so many things about it. One is you no longer have to look people in the eye. So when I was doing a podcast with people, I would normally have to look at them in the eye. Now on Zoom or Squadcast or whatever, you don't have to look people in the eye anymore. I love that. I don't like looking people in the eye. The other thing is you don't have to shake people's hands anymore, because you go in to shake the hand and they do the bro hug, and then with women you kiss them on the cheek, but then they go for both cheeks, and I just did one cheek, so my lips mesh their face, and I just don't like all the social awkwardness of being around other. So I like that about the lockdown. I hope these very positive trends continue. And that's good. So, all right, I'm going to go to another question. So this is from Bethany. What are some suggestions you have for someone about to go through a divorce that needs to get financially independent, and she's a former teacher and she has a chronic illness? Look, if you're about to go through a divorce and you know in advance, then this is really two questions. First off, how do you get financially independent? But also, how do you go through a divorce? So I don't know what your financial situation is like, but make sure you start to delineate your money from the other person's money. So they can't, I'm taking your side in this. I don't know really the story, but make sure they can't steal your money the second you say divorce. Like, make sure your money is in a separate account, even in a separate bank, so they can't find it at all and they can't sneak their way into it. Believe me, if it's in the same bank, they can sneak their way into it. They can lie, they can hustle, they can do whatever, and they will convince a bank rep to give them your money. So put your money in a separate bank where they can't find it. Now, I'm not going to suggest you take more than you deserve, because that's unfair, but make sure the house is not just in the other person's name. Make sure it's in both names. Kind of decide in advance what you want out of the divorce agreement, because divorce is not an emotional agreement, it's a legal agreement. So make sure you have a plan before, and meet with a lawyer now, and meet with a lawyer who's also an accountant, and come up with a plan about what you want before you even bring up divorce with the other person. So this way you know, okay, these financial assets are in my name and I'm going to protect them. The house is half in my name, half in this person's. The business is half in my name, half in this person's. What about their income? Do you want child support? So come up with a plan and do whatever legal steps you can take before you bring up divorce. The other thing is that's it on the divorce side. Just be very clear with your plan in advance and make sure you're willing to compromise. The worst thing you want to do for the sake of your own mental health and emotional health is spend too much energy planning this, fighting a divorce. So be willing, if the person's going to be angry and fight with you, maybe I'm right or wrong, but I'm always willing to give a little just to get out of the situation. You want to you only have one life, and you only have so many years of healthy years in that one life. You want to be, and every day you only have so much energy. If you want to be financially independent, you need 100% of your energy. You cannot spend 50% or even 99% of your energy on divorce and the other 10%, 1%, 50% on being financially independent. You need to build up your energy. You need 150% of your energy. So right now you have a chronic illness, according to your question, and you're emotionally unhappy because you're thinking about divorce. So that means you're not at full capacity. You need to make sure you are physically healthy as much as you can. Sleep 8 hours a day, eat well, exercise a little bit, get rid of all toxic relationships. If any of your friends disagree with the divorce, do not talk to them. If any of your family disagree with the divorce, get rid of them. Get rid of all toxic relationships, even go to a support group to get healthy relationships and to talk. Start writing 10 ideas a day. What are your 10 skills that you could do? What are the things you were interested in at 12? What are the most common pictures on your Instagram? Start. What are 10 side hustles you wouldn't mind doing? And start researching side hustles. And you could do that by listening to past episodes of this IG Live. What I would suggest is,
I would also suggest maybe, I don't know if you've gone through counseling, but sometimes, this is a really hard time for a lot of people and emotions are high. And maybe see if you can, together you guys could go through a counseling, because a lot of times that works. A lot of those issues work out in something like that. And so if you've been together a while, you have children, it's worth trying to work things out. And if they don't, then you follow the other.
I agree with you
path,
on that, but even with that, consult a lawyer at the same time or before, because that could be. I'm going to be a little cynical. That could be a strategy, which is going for counseling makes the other person feel you're not also going to a lawyer at the same time. And so it could be a way of delaying that person from going to your husband from going to a lawyer. So I'm being cynical with the strategy. I'm being very strategic, like a chess player.
Well, see, I'm not thinking like that.
No.
Because you want to be really sincere. If you really want to try to work it out, I would not think other things, because then it's not like you're not putting your heart and your all into it. I would suggest putting your all into it first. And if you then find that it's not going to work, then you can go through the other path. But if you're going to go to a counselor just to do something else, or to, I don't know, deceive the other person, to me, that's just not, I wouldn't do that. I would just be more,
you could do
100% try to work things out. You want to take care of yourself.
You could do both sincerely, though, right? Like, you could go to a counselor, but at the same time, separate funds.
Yeah, I don't know. I would still, me personally, I would try it all first, and not think of the other way. I would think of the one way, because when you're thinking about two different ways, it's hard for you to put your heart all into one way. If you're thinking, so maybe, I'm not saying for a long time, but at least you're trying, and you try 100%. And if it doesn't work, then you move to another thing.
We're going for counseling after this Instagram Live. So no, just kidding. We're not. I have a podcast after this.
Anyway,
the other thing is, you're a former teacher, the person who asked this question. So one way, start learning about online homeschooling. So online homeschooling is going to be a $10 billion industry next year, because so many schools are still going to be closed. So think about, even now, how you can advertise to schools or to parents or to kids, how you could teach online, and maybe you could set up tutor,
well, online.
And then you have to figure out how to scale it. But you could scale it with like homework assignments and so on, and so that you could charge more, and you could hire other teachers,
and then you can start your own online business like that.
Yeah,
right?
that's what I mean. Like you can set your online business just through Zoom.
Start through a service, and then from the service learn how it works, and then branch off into your own business.
Yeah,
so you
absolutely.
don't have to share.
And then here's another thing. Do an online newsletter about divorce. So, what to do when you think that, how about you could start a newsletter, the 7 habits of highly effective divorces. So, you interview people who are divorced, you interview divorce lawyers, you interview accountants, and set up a newsletter about divorce. Go to substack.com, charge $10 a month. Believe me, you will have millions of people sign up. And I don't think there's a newsletter out there like that right now. So boom. Okay, another question. And by the way, you mentioned you had to stop teaching because you were unable to walk or drive when you were at the worst with your chronic illness. I hope your illness gets better. But what the business ideas I just described will allow you to make money from home. Susan Flynn says, James, Wall Street Journal says 7.3% of the people who fled New York City in the last few weeks to moved to Miami. Maybe Florida will get some good pizza. Listen, maybe Florida will get some good pizza, but you have to convince me that New York City had good pizza. I think almost every other city but New York City has good pizza. I'm a fan of sushi in New York City. I think New York City has the best sushi on the planet. Well, maybe San Francisco. But I never liked Two Boots Pizza, but I never liked the pizza in New York City. All right, Max's question. What impact will the new Department of Justice proposal to limit internet firms' protections have? So right now, the Department of Justice is basically proposing 2 things. They're basically saying the internet firms like Twitter and Facebook and so on have to be a little bit more aggressive about taking down hate speech and violent speech and stuff like that. And at the same time, they have to be fair and consistent across the board. Guess what? That's impossible. How they don't even know what's hate speech. Like,
It's all
you can watch
subjective.
snuff videos on Twitter, as I've said before, and at the same time, if you just type in the word coronavirus into Facebook, into a status, just that one word, they'll ban you. So, I think what's going to happen is the Supreme Court will say this is not constitutional, and that's the end of that. It's not going to happen. But you have a very good question. If you said something in the past on the internet that would be considered racist, misogynist, or anti-LGBTQ, and you're worried it may come back to haunt you, what strategies do you recommend to minimize the fallout? First off, you can actually look back through all your tweets over the past 10 years or 6 years or whatever and eliminate anything you don't like. And it's true. The words change. Like, J.K. Rowling says, listen, biological women have rights too. So 10 years ago, of course, she would have been applauded as a feminist. Now her books are being burned because she's a TERF, a trans exclusionary radical feminist. And so saying biological women need to assert their rights sometimes, she's being viewed as anti-trans, which is BS. So she writes about that very thoroughly. So it's true that sometimes standards change. So 2 strategies. One is go back and eliminate anything you think might be questionable. You can go all the way back. The other thing is, let's say you miss something and someone brings something up. Then you say, listen, you don't want to justify your existence. Whenever you have to convince, this is an important thing. Whenever you have to convince someone of something, you're giving them too much status. So if you have to convince an angry mob that you were right in saying something, and maybe you were wrong, by the way, but you could say, listen, one thing I know is that now, more than ever, is a time for me to listen. Say everything you need to say, but it's a time for me to listen. And then just be silent. Stories have a way of blowing over. So even if you're worried about, even if your boss comes to you and says, we saw this tweet from 10 years ago where you say biological women have a right to their own bathroom without men coming in. And that's, a lot of the trans people are complaining about that. Well, you say, listen, I understand. I'm happy to talk to anybody. I really do believe this is a time for me to listen. Thank you for pointing it out for me. I will delete that. I certainly do not want to be offensive. I'm happy to talk to anybody. But the most important thing is you keep repeating this. Now is the time for me to listen and to hear and to understand. This is a strategy. Again, I'm talking strategy. Hopefully it's sincere, but it's a strategy for not losing your job in that situation. Mm-hmm. This is neither good nor bad. James Franco had a situation 2 or 3 years ago where women were accusing him of something. And you know what? They were probably right. Who knows? I don't know. Nobody knows the real story. Do you remember that? No, you don't. You do remember all the people who tried to defend themselves, like whoever they were. But James Franco went on Jimmy Kimmel and he said that what I exactly just said. He said, listen, I have my story, they have their stories, but I do know it's important for me that now is the time for me to listen, and later on I'll tell the story. That was the end of the story. His career was not canceled, and he moved on. The people who tried to defend themselves lost their careers. Now, I'm not saying what he did was good or bad. I'm just saying this is a strategy. For all I know, everything's true and it's horrible. But I don't like when everybody's tweets are aired out in the open. Lives change, opinions change, people change. People are forgiven. People do their time. But if you're in a hostile work environment, maybe you should be the one to quit. But I'm just suggesting this as a strategy. But also, go and try to clean up your shit from the past. Here's another question. This person wants to know, should he throw a large percentage, like 40 or 50% of his savings into the FANG stocks? So the FANG stocks are Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Google, Apple. FAANG. Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, Google. I don't know. I think Amazon, yes and no. Who knows? I personally do not like to be in all the stocks that the front page of the Wall Street Journal talks about, because then you're like everybody else. And the way to make money in the stock market is to go against the beaten path. Certainly right now there's going to be future uncertainty in the market, but the flip side is the Federal Reserve is pouring trillions of dollars into the market. So there's no real answer. I always try to find stocks that are different from what other people are doing, but here's a recommendation I have. learn what Warren Buffett is invested in and learn what stocks he's selling. You can Google that. What stocks does Warren Buffett own? There's a website, j3sg.com, where there's a box called Institution. You could type Berkshire Hathaway, and it'll show you all the stocks Warren Buffett owns, and you could see the 2 or 3 stocks he bought, and you could see all the stocks he sold. By the way, it says on that website he bought airline stocks, but he just sold all his airline stocks. But in any case, I don't like to pick stocks. I like to look at what people like Warren Buffett, Carl Icahn, and so on are doing. People smart. I always like to be the dumbest person in the room when it comes to investing. So, and should you put 50% of your portfolio in stocks? No. Cash is king. The best you're going to do with stocks at this point is 10, 20% a year. That's the best, unless you have some kind of edge. And most people don't have an edge. The Wall Street Journal is their edge. So it's better to build skills. Keep cash in the bank so you're not stressed. Most of my cash is kept in the bank. So I don't stress when the market falls 50% like it did a few months ago. I don't have stress. And I look for business opportunities. And then I take advantage of that. So I prefer investing in myself than investing in stocks. But 10% of your savings, go for it. 40%, I don't know. But whatever you decide to do, you can't regret it later. You can't say, oh, I shouldn't have listened to James. Now I'm screwed. Make a decision and then stick with it.
Also, too, it's very difficult to make money if you're not a professional to trade stocks.
Yeah.
I would not recommend trading like daily.
Right, and
that's very, very, very difficult.
There's another good point in that too, which is that you mentioned 50%. Do not put any of your cash, don't use more than 2% of your portfolio for any one stock. This is a rule. Even when I make a private investment, she breaks that one and she goes and she's insane. So even when I'm making a private investment in a private company, I don't put more than 1% of my portfolio into that company, and then later on I might double down, but that's it. Then I never put money into it again. Now, I don't necessarily sell it, so I have one company that I invested in, and it was 1% of my portfolio, and now it's like 20% of my portfolio because it's grown. So, as Warren Buffett says, if you have Michael Jordan on your team, you don't trade him away. But my initial investments are never more than 1 or 2% of my portfolio. How did Robyn learn stocks? How did you learn about stocks?
I actually just learned doing it myself. It was hard.
But did you read books?
I read a little bit, not much though. I actually learned by doing it, and then I would just research the stocks. But I know one thing that was important to me is I had to really believe in it. I had to believe in the stock, either that I would use the product, or I have a hard time buying stocks that I just don't use. I wouldn't use the product, or I just don't believe in it. So
which, by the way,
and I traded a lot, and thank goodness I was okay, but there were days that I lost lots of money, and
you put more than 1% of your portfolio.
Yeah, I would just double down on some things, and then all of a sudden the next day it would just go, and it's scary. And then you would sell while it's dropping, and then you lose money because then the next day it comes right back up again. So I learned the hard way that I just would have to walk away. If I did believe in a stock, I'd have to just walk away, even when it was dropping 50%.
By the way, this is a good point. This is a really counterintuitive point. The less I invest in a stock, the more money I make for that very reason. So if I don't invest a lot in a stock and it goes down, maybe I'll double down, or maybe I won't care. But if I had too much, then fear is going to rule my investment decisions. So always. I started making money investing and trading I did it all along, but I was really consistent. I made an enormous amount of money investing starting in 2007. I haven't had a down year since. And the key is, the one difference is that I started reducing the position size, so then I could rest during stressful times and not have the stress make the decisions for me. Yeah. Did you read any newsletters though?
No, I watched the news constantly. I had the TV on, I had my computer on. That's what I did all day. Did you see me on CNBC ever? No, I didn't. Sorry. I know.
So what did I think? So here's another question. What do we think of the Dr. Zev hydroxychloroquine protocol? So for those who don't know, Dr. Zev created this protocol of using hydroxychloroquine as prophylaxis to prevent coronavirus before you get it. And so I can't answer that. Robyn can't answer that. We're not doctors. You should consult your doctor. But I will point out there was one chart I saw, which I'll try to find. I might not be able to find it now. Here it is. So all the countries that do typically take hydroxychloroquine and zinc for malaria as prophylaxis, they have a very low death rate on coronavirus. So India, Costa Rica, Australia, South Korea, Brazil, Israel. But the US does not. So we have a high deaths per million. All the countries I just listed have low deaths per million. Could it be because of hydroxychloroquine and zinc as prophylaxis? We don't know, but that's an interesting data point. And, you know, hydroxychloroquine, whenever we mention it, I don't know if you remember, even in March, I would mention hydroxychloroquine and somebody would say, you know, some political thing. So, you know, just look at the data and it's interesting, you know, and see what that guy's qualifications are and so on. I don't think I got to all the questions, but, am I still long on Bitcoin? Yes. And here's the thing about Bitcoin. I've been avoiding talking about it a little bit because I don't want to make this like a financial thing, but a lot of people right now are breathing a huge sigh of relief because Bitcoin exists. Why? Because every currency in the world is going to shit. Like right now the US dollar is the strongest currency in the world for good reason, because the US economy is the strongest in the world even now. And there's no alternative. Are you going to invest in the renminbi? Are you going to invest in the yen? Are you going to invest in pesos? Are you going to invest in the euro? No, you're going to invest in the dollar. But, you know, you have to have, and look, I like the strength of the dollar, but you have to have a little bit of sigh of relief knowing in a worst case scenario, when it looks like the dollar's starting to get in trouble, there's always Bitcoin. Bitcoin's not a fad. It's not going away. There's $200 billion invested in it. Some of the smartest people in the world are invested in it. You don't invest $200 billion in a fad. So this exists. It's an asset class. It's better than gold because how do you move gold around? Bitcoin is just digital. So learn about Bitcoin. It's worth spending the time to learn about Bitcoin. Whatever percentage you think chance the dollar has of collapsing, put that percentage of your net worth, whether it's 1% or 3% or whatever, put that in Bitcoin and at least breathe a sigh of relief knowing that if all the world goes to hell, Bitcoin is going to go up huge. Why do I know this? Whenever there's political conflict anywhere, Bitcoin goes up. So the same thing, if there's political conflict in the US, Bitcoin is going to soar. I mean, it's gone from a low of 3,000 during this crisis to over 10,000. So that tells you something right there. And right now it's still around 10,000.
You have 2 minutes. You still have 2 minutes.
I have 2 minutes, but I've got to get ready for a podcast. I'm having a podcast with Ben Greenfield, who wrote this book, Boundless, which is this enormous book about health. So this was a heavy reading, and but that starts in 1 minute. But ask me questions. Anytime you think of a question, ask me at my phone number, 212. What did I say my phone number was? 203-590-8607. That's 203-590-8607. It'll say you have to sign up for like regulatory reasons or whatever, but send me questions there so then I'm not trying to compile them from Instagram and it gives me a chance to think about them a little bit before. 203-590-8607. Meanwhile, we will I will share this Instagram on my Instagram feed, plus we'll share it on YouTube. Jay will share it on YouTube in an hour or so, and it'll go on my podcast, The James Altucher Show. Text me at 203-590-8607, and I'll even send you idea lists every now and then and updates about where we are and where I'm appearing and meetups. And I like this format of doing things, of reading the questions off the text, because I have the text up huge on my screen. So thanks for the questions. We didn't do the BS headline of the day. I'll just quickly do that. Social media platforms are profiting from COVID-19 misinformation. That's ABC News, BS headline of the day. My response is, of course they're profiting from misinformation. That's 100% of how they make money. They only make money when you argue. Oh, some anonymous person disagreed with me on Twitter. I have to argue. Twitter just made one more penny. That's how they do it. They're always going to make money from misinformation. ABC, thanks for enlightening me. For 20 years, that's the business model of every social media platform. I do have the Cosmopolitan headline of the day. I'll give it tomorrow. Thank you so much, everybody. And see you tomorrow. And I'm sharing this everywhere. Text me 203-590-8607. Bye.